Okay, so coefficient is a number in front of the variable, and then the constant is going to be that value without a variable. So this is going to do this for elimination. So if we're looking at this coefficient of x, we look at where x is, and that number in front ends up being 7. So 7 is that coefficient of x, and then that number in front of y is 3. So that's going to be that coefficient. So this is going to be 3. This is going to be my 3. That's that number in front of y. And then that constant is that very last thing that is there. So this constant here ends up being 4, the number 4. So that's just some of those things, because I'm going to tell you, because you need to know where to find what's the coefficient of x, what's the coefficient of y, and what's the constant. And this is in standard form again. So in solving eliminations, you're going to have both equations are going to be in standard form. So this is one of those ways that you know you want to do this, because both of them are going to be in standard form. And then when you're solving, requires that you're going to multiply one or both of the numbers, and you have or both of the equations. And when you do that, you got to make sure that you're going to multiply by the entire. Notice that I put entire equation. That's like capitalized. This is like highlight. You need to put this. You make sure you do the entire equation. I've been doing this job for a long time, and that's the most common mistake that students do, is they don't multiply the entire equation. So I give you step-by-step instructions right here. So here's this given lovely little example, and we're going to go through. And then notice the coefficients. So you have 5x and 3x. The 5 and the 3, they're not opposite each other. But if I look at my y's, I have negative 6y and I have positive 6y. So those are just opposite. So if I just go through and I add these two equations together. So if I just add those two, and I just 3 plus 5 is 8x, and then negative 6 plus 6y cancels, and then you get negative 32 plus 48, and then you get 16. So then you're going to go through and you're going to solve for x. Okay, we're going to go through and we are going to solve for x. So when we go through and solve for x, I'm just going to divide by 8. And you get x is equal to 16 divided by 8 is 2. So now we have to solve for those remaining variables. And when we go through and we solve for that remaining variable, it doesn't matter which equation that you want to do. And I am going to pick the second of my original. I'm going to pick the second one. And the reason why I'm picking that one is because there's no negatives. So that first equation both had negatives. And this seems to be a little easier, because that's usually my most common mistake, is I forget to apply those negatives. So y equals 48. So now I got to go through and I got to solve my y. So I'm going to have 3, whatever my x was, plus 6y equals 48. So now I've got 3 times 2, because I'm substituting in 2 in for x. So 3 times 2 is 6, plus 6y equals 48. I'm running out of room, so I'm moving it over. So I'm going to move this 6 over to the other side. So I'm going to subtract 6. I'm going to subtract 6. So now you've got that 6y. That's a 6, by the way. That 6y is going to equal 48 minus 6 is 42. And then you're going to go back through, and we have to go through, and now we're going to divide by 6. So I'm going to divide it by 6, divide by 6. So then y is equal to 42 divided by 6 ends up being 8. So then my solution is just going to be, that solution is going to be 2, 8. And that, again, this is where you can double check on Desmos, and you're looking for where those two lines are going to intersect. So you can always double check on Desmos, and you're going to look to see where those two lines intersect. And if you get your intersection point to be the x value to be 2, the y value to be 8, and that's going to be your point, then this is where you know that you got this right. That's one of the things that I would always do with Desmos is double check. Just type both equations in, look to see where those two lines intersect, and then you see if you got it right. So the back side. This time, you're solving when neither coefficients are opposite. So negative 2x and 10x, negative 5y and 3y. So none of those coefficients are opposite, so you're going to multiply both equations by the x values coefficient. And we're doing this because, and you might have learned differently in earlier, but in middle school or in middle school algebra 1, you might have learned it a little bit different, but because we're distance learning, this will always work. And so what I do is I take this coefficient, negative 2, and I'm going to put it down here. And then I'm going to take the coefficient 10, and I'm going to put it up there. So you're going to go through and multiply. So and I'm just going to squeeze this over. So I have negative 2x minus 5y equals negative 22. And then down here, I've got 10x plus 3y equals positive 22. So what happens, and notice that I've already put those numbers. So this 10 moved up here. So I'm going to multiply that whole equation by 10. And then this bottom equation is negative 2. This coefficient is negative 2. So it moves down there. And then to make sure one of the coefficients needs to be the opposite sign. So 10 is positive, negative 2 is negative 2, and then I'm just going to make this going to be a positive 2 because it will make my life easier. And now when I go through and I multiply these out, and remember, when you're multiplying the entire equation. So 10 times negative 2, negative 20x. 10 times negative 5, negative 50y. 10 times negative 22 is negative 220. And then you go through and you multiply this equation. So 2 times 10 is 20x. 2 times 3 is 6y. And 2 times 22 is 66. So that's this first part right here. You had to multiply both equations. And then we multiplied the entire equation again. That's one of those things that we forget. So now we're going to add these two equations together. So I'm going to add this up. Negative 20 plus 20, that cancels out. So I've eliminated that x. Negative 50 plus 6y gives me negative 44y equals negative 220. So negative 220 plus 66. And I don't know why I put 66, but I don't know. I can't do math. 2 times 22 is 44. Sorry, guys. 2 times 22 is 44. So negative 220 plus 44 gives me negative 176. You add those two equations together. So now we're going to go through and we're going to solve for y. So negative 44y equals negative 176 divided by negative 44. So y is equal to positive 4. So now I'm going to substitute into one of my originals. Either one of those originals, and again, I like to do the one with the least amount of negatives because I'm lazy. So I'm picking this bottom one just because there's no negatives in there. That's the only reason why I'm picking it. So we have 10x plus 3y equals 22. So I'm using that equation. And then I have 10x plus 3 times whatever my y is, 22. And so this y value ended up being 4. So I'm going to go through 3 times 4 is 12. And then you still have the 22 and 10x plus 12. So now what happens is we got to go through and we're going to solve. So I'm going to subtract 12. And now I have 10x is equal to 12 minus 12 cancels out. 22 minus 12 gives me 10. So then divide by 10. So x is equal to 1. So again, my answer is 1 comma 4. 1 comma 4. And now you've got systems. Oops, I'm sorry, guys. I totally made it so you couldn't read that. So you have 10x plus 3y equals 22. That was my original. Substituted in that 4 in for y. Times 4 is 12. And then I'm going to go through and I'm going to eliminate my 12. I'm going to subtract my 12 on both sides. So 22 minus 12 was this 10. And I'm left with 10x. And then I divided by 10 and I got 1. So that's your solution. And then the real life, Dan's school is selling tickets to a choral performance. One of the first day's ticket sales. The school has sold 4 senior citizen tickets and 3 child tickets for a total of this. So day 1. So this is going to be day 1 information. So Dan's school's on the first day. So this would be day 1. So we got that equation on day 1 because we have how many senior citizens? Is 4 senior citizens. So 4x plus 3y, and then that total cost was 70. And then on day 2, so this is going to be my day 2 equation. So the school took $31, so $31 on day 2, and sold 1x, but 3y. So again, I'm writing my equation, 1x plus 3y, and that was $31 total dollars. So we're going to go through and solve. So you have 4x plus 3y equals 70, and 1x plus 3y equals 31. Now this one is kind of cool because I can make one of these be negative. And the reason why is because they're both a positive, and they're both 3. So if I just multiply this bottom equation by -1, this top equation doesn't change. So 4x plus 3y equals 70. And then if I go through and I distribute this -1 to everything, so -1 times 1 is -1x. -1 times -3y is -3y. And -1 times -31 is -31. It's positive 31. It's -31. So now when I look, 3y minus 3y, oh, that became eliminated. So my y becomes eliminated. And I have 4 minus 1 is 3x. And then 70 minus 31. 70 minus 31 is 39. I'm going to divide by 3. I'm going to divide by 3. So x is equal to, and then you get 13. So x was my what again? Oh, x was my senior citizen. So what was the price of a senior citizen's? That's going to be $13. And then if I want to find the price of the child prices, and again, I'm going to take this easy one. I'm going to take an easier one because now you've got x plus 3y is 31, and you have 13 plus 3y is 31. So I'm going to subtract my 13, subtract my 13. That goes away, and I have 3y is equal to 31 minus 13, and I get 18. And then we have to solve for y by dividing by 3. So 18 divided by 3. So y is 6. So a child's price is 6. So a senior citizen is $13, and a child price is $6. That's a real life example of, oh, again, you can't see. That's a real life example of uh, doing this, is going through and solving this by looking at it. So that's that real life example.